Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Ben Olson, that's Nathan Fox. We're the founders of LSATdemon.com and our weekly podcast, Thinking LSAT. We have a question here proposed by Eric. Thank you, Eric. It says, what do we mean by passage-driven versus answer-driven question types?
Comes up mostly on logical reasoning. There are two main types. You could think of all LR questions in two big types, and we call them passage-driven versus answer-driven. Passage-driven is like a must-be-true question. Which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? We call that passage-driven because they're asking you, hey, I just gave you a bunch of facts. You're supposed to pick an answer that is driven by those facts. Which one can you prove based on those facts?
Assume that the facts in the passage are true.
Right. So those questions in LSAT Demon, those are must be true questions, supported questions, necessary assumption, flaw, all the questions that are asking you to describe what the passage said. Reasoning questions. It's descriptive. Another way to think about it is descriptive question types, where it's just like, hey, all I'm really looking for you to do here is to describe the passage. Not all, but like 95% of must be true questions of reading comprehension questions, like 95% of reading comprehension questions fall into this passage driven type where it's just, hey, it's really just a reading comprehension question in disguise, right? They're asking you, did you understand the passage? Can you pick an answer that is based on the passage? That's what we mean when we say passage driven. What did it say? Essentially is what they're asking you. What did they do there? What did they say there? Answer driven question types are more about changing the game, and strengthen and weaken questions are the best example of answer driven question types. They almost always will say which one of the following, if true, or which one of the following, if assumed, will most strongly support the information above, or which one, if true, will undermine the argument above.
The key there, right, is that in a passage-driven question, the LSAT is sometimes explicitly, but even if not explicitly, they're assuming that the statements in the passage are true. In a answer-driven question, they're explicitly telling you, hey, assume that the 5 answer choices are true. And you definitely cannot do that in a must be true question, right? Which is a passage driven question. You can't say, hey, which one of these must be true? In an answer driven question, you're saying, okay, I'm just going to accept all 5 answer choices as true and then decide what follows from that if it is true.
Yeah. You do have to read all the words in the question to figure out what type of a question it is. Don't just think that, because it said strongly supported, therefore it is a supported question or a must be true question or a passage driven question. No, I'll give you 2 examples here.
Yep.
There's a question that says, which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? That's a supported question. They're asking you, hey, which one of these can you prove based on the information you were just given?
That's passage driven.
Again, which one of the following is most strongly supported by the information above? But I can change just a few of the words and say, which one of the following, if true, most strongly supports the statement above?
That's answer driven.
And now that's an answer driven. That's actually a strengthened question. It does use the words strongly supported, but look at the words around that phrase, and they're asking you not which one is strongly supported by the passage. Rather, they're saying which one of the following, if true, will most strongly support the passage. Yeah. And so I'm imagining the arrows going in a different way, right? On a passage-driven question, it's like, hey, which one is most strongly supported by that passage? So the passage here supports the answer over here. The other type of question, which one of the following, if true, most strongly supports the argument above, is asking you, hey, if these answer choices are true, one of them is going to make that argument look better. And that's what we call an answer-driven question type.
Yeah, here's an analogy. Who has your back? right? Is the passage backing up you, or are you backing up the passage, right? Who's supporting who? In a passage-driven question, the passage is backing up the answer choices. It's justifying one of them. It's completely the opposite in an answer-driven question. The answer is backing up or attacking the passage.
Cool. We could go on all day about this, talking about specific question types. I think it is kind of interesting to think about flaw questions. Flaw questions say which one of the following, flaw questions say something like, the argument above is most susceptible to criticism on which one of the following grounds.
Mm-hmm.
And it is important that people differentiate that question type, which is passage driven, from a weaken question, which says which one of the following, if true, would undermine the logic above, which is answer driven. That's the big difference between flaw and weaken, is that flaw questions are asking you to describe something that the passage actually did wrong. So they have to have done this thing, or else you can't pick that answer. On a weaken question, you get to assume that the answer is true, and then think, oh, yeah, if that's true, then that's going to be a problem for them. And that's an answer-driven question type. So flaw questions are a lot more like must-be trues, where it's on you to prove, based on the passage, hey, the passage has my back here. The passage justifies me picking this answer because this answer describes something that the passage actually did. That's a flaw question. Whereas a weaken question is, well, they don't have to have done this. The question is telling me which one of the following, if true, would undermine their logic. So it doesn't have to be anything that they talked about at all. It's brand new information, but I get to assume that it's true. Once I assume that it's true, does it cause them a problem? And that's a weaken question, which is in the answer-driven family.
For those who really just want to get this nailed down, I'm going to say the list of questions that are in each type, just so people know. So answer-driven has weaken, strengthen, sufficient assumption, paradox, and evaluate. Whereas passage-driven has conclusion, must be true, supported, flaw, necessary assumption, reasoning, disagree, and parallel questions.
Yeah, more of the question types are passage driven. This is always a reading comprehension test first. Even on the logic games, it's just really like, did you understand what it said? Did you read everything? Did you really understand what they said there? Yeah. On logical reasoning, it is, again, primarily a reading comprehension test, and they ask you very reading comprehension focused questions like all the ones that Ben just described. Disagree is a good example. Which one of the following, it can be inferred from the discussion between Mario and Elisa that they must disagree on which one of the following. And that is definitely a passage-driven question. They're asking you to look at the record and say, well, yeah, the record shows that they disagree on this thing. It's not which one would they probably disagree on. It's which one does the record show that they disagree on. And that very literal thing pops up a lot on LSAT logical reasoning. I think people don't understand. They think that oh no, it's all about argumentation. Well, it is maybe on strengthen and weaken and paradox and those other, few answer-driven question types. But on all other question types, it's basically well, what did the record say? Pick an answer that is justifiable based on the record.
Great. Thanks for that suggestion, Eric. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admission news. Law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.